We're ready to go. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. I'm Councillor Dawn Quinn, and thank you for attending Monday, February 12th, Committee of Whole meeting. And first, we have the land acknowledgement. On February 12th, 2024, we acknowledge that this sacred land on which Smith Falls is now located has been the site of human activity for over 10,000 years and is rich in Indigenous history. This land is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe Nation. We are grateful to the Algonquin ancestors who cared for the land and the water in order that we might meet here today. We are also grateful to the Algonquin people for their contribution in making the Rideau Canal, which runs through Smith Falls. We are mindful of broken covenants and the need to reconcile with all our relations. Together, we care for this land and each other, drawing on the strength of our mutual history of nation building through peace and friendship and being mindful of generations to come. We will call to order at 5:02 p.m. And the approval of the agenda, we have one addition. Clerk Costello, please.
If we could add item 9.10 to 2024 FCM conference attendance, please.
Thank you. So noted. And so February 12th Committee of Whole meeting agenda be approved as amended. Councillor Robinson, Councillor Miller, all in favor? Thank you.
I'm sorry, can you speak up? It's hard to hear you back here.
I'll try.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Disclosure of pecuniary interest and or conflict of interest or general nature thereof. We have none. Thank you. Approval of minutes. Recommended motion the minutes of January 8th, 2024 and January 15th, 2024 and January 29th, 2024 Committee of Whole meetings be approved as circulated. Councillor McKenna and Councillor Robinson, thank you. We're very pleased this evening to have a delegation. We have Lori Huber doing the presentation for the 2022 consolidated financial statements. Now I understand we're not able to see her. She can see us and she's going to go ahead with her presentation that we can hear.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Hopefully you can hear me okay.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, good evening, everyone. It's my real pleasure to be here before you virtually this evening to walk you through the highlights of our 2022 audit. You would have seen as part of the package for tonight's meeting a combination of the financial statements along with our audit findings. So we'll stick to the colored document that I see on the screen here now. Joining me here this evening as well is Ms. Caitlin Cox. Caitlin has worked very closely with myself along with the management team to complete the year-end audit. So her and I will be presenting in combination here this evening. So getting started in terms of our report, you will see at the very start there are a number of audit highlights on page number 4 of our report. We will walk you through the highlights of each of these items in the subsequent sections of our report. So if we move along to page number 5, it should say status of the audit at the top of the page. You will see here some of the bullets that are yet to be completed to finalize the 2022 year, but these are somewhat of standard ordinary course items upon completion of the audit, certainly having robust conversation here tonight with yourselves being the committee. Ultimately, the financial statements will go to council for their approval, which is slated to be next week, being February 20th. Assuming council does accept and approve the financial statements, that's the date upon which we will be able to finalize a report, but we'll certainly share our draft report with you here this evening. So moving along, the next slide, page number 6, in terms of anything new and different to our audit plan, relative to either our plan at the start of fiscal 2022 or even any changes relative to 2021. You'll certainly see at the top, you might be wondering why our audit is so late. There were some significant changes, certainly at the town, through the course of the year to complete fiscal 2022. So certainly that was taken into consideration along with any implications in terms of financial reporting and the financial reporting environment. Other things to bring to your attention relative to our audit was our group materiality. You'll see there was set at $750,000 this year. Recognizing the consolidated financial statements are the statements upon which we're reporting here this evening, which have other entities that feed into the municipality consistent with previous years, no significant change. So with that, we'll go on to the next page and we'll see on page number 7 of our report, in terms of what was new and different this year, there were no new accounting standards this year that were required to be considered in our audit, which was good. There was a new auditing standard that you'll see here on page number 7, which was adopted into our audit. It certainly was requiring us to take a more granular look at some of the risk assessments in terms of how we plan and execute our audit. Not necessarily a KPMG audit. These were new auditing standards that were provided to us from Canadian auditing standards. And certainly of interest is a more granular level of understanding of the entity and its environment, along with any IT risks, including any matters related to cybersecurity. So in terms of findings related to this new audit standard, you can see at the bottom of the page there, certainly no significant issues or matters to bring to your attention. And with that, we will pass it over to the numbers themselves for fiscal 2022. And I'll ask my colleague here, Caitlin, to walk you through the highlights of some of the numbers themselves.
Perfect. Thank you, Lori. So starting here, you can see your statement of financial position or your balance sheet that details your assets and your liabilities. I'll start at the top with your financial assets, which you can see are sitting at $25.3 million as compared to about $22 million in the previous year. The two components of this increase year over year are largely due to your receivables. The first one would be a significant increase in your taxes receivable to about $1.4 million in the current year. And this is actually just due to one large payment from a commercial customer that wasn't received until subsequent to year end. So if you normalize for this one item, this balance has actually remained fairly steady year over year and there's no concerns with collections. Right below that, you'll also see your accounts receivable experienced an increase, and this is largely just due to the timing of some of the grant revenues you earned but haven't actually collected yet in cash. So that cash also came through subsequent to year end. Other than that, fairly consistent on the financial assets. If we move down to your financial liabilities, you can see the current year balance of just over $26 million is extremely consistent with the balance you saw last year. The main item to highlight here that might jump out to you is there was a decrease in your long-term liabilities. Those are actually just your regular payments on long-term debt. With the exception of that item, all other balances are pretty steady year over year. If we move down to the bottom section of this page, we've detailed your non-financial assets. So those tangible items that have a life extending greater than 1 year generally. And the main component of this is your capital assets, which are sitting at $102 million. So there does continue to be a significant investment in the town's capital assets each year. And we've detailed a few of the major projects that happened in 2022. So largely your municipal complex project, the water and wastewater infrastructure upgrades on Beckwith Street, and the road network and ongoing pavement improvements you do each year. If we move forward to the next page, staying on the topic of your tangible capital assets, this is a visual representation of the components of those assets that are owned by the town. As you can see here, majority of your capital assets are the buildings that are owned by the town, and then the other component that's fairly significant would be your linear assets. So that's the roads, bridges, and water and sewer items. If we keep moving forward, the other items we provided is some detail on your reserve and reserve funds, which you can see are sitting at just under $18 million at the end of the year. This 5-year trend analysis is really just to show you the key changes in those balances. And as you can see, that council does continue to set aside additional funds each year and grow those reserves and reserve funds that are available for you. Moving forward to the next slide, on a similar note, we've shown a 5-year trend of the reserves and reserve funds as a percentage of your operating expenses. This is really a good indicator of the percentage of your annual expenses that can be covered through the funds that are set aside in your reserves. The ministry benchmark is aiming for greater than 20%, and as you can see here, the town's sitting at just under 60%. If we keep moving forward to the next slide, we've detailed the tax arrears as a percentage of the current levy. So this is essentially your tax arrears or property taxes not yet collected and owed to the town as a percentage of the overall levy. So there does continue to be a downward trend on this ratio, which is what you're hoping to see, as that indicates the town's collections of property taxes continue to remain strong. If we keep moving forward to the next page, there's lots of good information here that shows your statement of operations for 2022. So similar to what I did with the balance sheet, I'm just going to stick to some of the key highlights. The first one being your annual surplus for the 2022 fiscal year is $7.6 million. And if I look at some of the key highlights, I would say the first item that will likely jump out to you is at the top under your revenues, you can see government transfers increased significantly to $10 million. And this is largely due to funding that was received for capital projects that were ongoing throughout the year and the enhanced spending that happened on these projects. The next item that might stick out is right below it on your user charges, which did increase fairly significantly when compared to 2021. Again, because we're talking about fiscal 2022, this is starting to normalize to the more pre-pandemic levels with reduced closures and enhanced services. If we move down to your operating expenses of $30 million at the end of the year, there was an increase when you compare it to the previous year. However, that's largely due to those increased revenues as well as inflationary increases stemming from the current economic environment. Moving forward to the next slide, there's some more information on your operating expenses, and this shows the breakdown of your operating expenses by type rather than by your department or segment. So sticking out here, salaries, wages, and employee benefits are just under 50% of the town's total operating costs for the year. This is slightly higher than some of your peers, but that's largely due to the police services that are offered by the town, so that's still consistent with what you would expect. Other than this, the item to highlight is you can see your materials and services are your next largest category at 31% of your expenses. With that, I'll hand it back to Lori to speak to the next page, which starts with audit misstatements.
Thanks very much, Caitlin. So moving along, I'll go through the balance of our report fairly swiftly and certainly would welcome any questions if there are any upon completion. So in terms of the numbers themselves relative to our audit work, as I said earlier, our group reporting materiality for 2022 was $750,000, which is really our benchmark, if you will, to quantify whether or not there are any uncorrected items that might materially misstate the financial statements. Pleased to report here tonight that you'll see on the next page, there was only one item really related to a matter of timing, actually, that stemmed from the previous year for $75,000 relative to materiality of $750,000. So that will remedy itself in future years, being in 2023, because it was a matter of timing and cutoff between 2021 and 2022. So really, the message here this evening relative to the audit is the books and records upon completion of the audit were actually quite clean, and there's certainly nothing remaining going into fiscal 2023, which is always a good news story. Page number 17 should say control deficiencies at the top of the page. As part of any financial statement audit, we are required to gain an understanding of the internal controls related to the financial reporting process. So we've done that again this year and certainly made some updates relative to any changes on the part of the town's management. Pleased to report here tonight that there are no significant deficiencies in internal controls in our view based on the work that has been completed. Should there be any significant deficiencies, we would need to report to yourselves, being those charged with governance. Moving along the next few pages, we can look at page number 19 and page number 20 together. As I said earlier, it was a status quo year from an accounting standards point of view, so nothing new and significantly different compared to 2021 related to any significant accounting policies and practices. However, I have given myself the opportunity to use this forum to certainly say there is a fairly significant new accounting standard coming into play for fiscal 2023, which is titled Asset Retirement Obligations, which will certainly be uniquely different compared to historical practice related to any remediation or any activities that might need to happen in the future relative to legislation. So a great example of that would be the financial statements today do not picture any liabilities related to any remediation effort, for example, as there might be asbestos in any building. Under this new standard, those are the types of things that will be caught in this new standard that actually will land on the financial statements themselves in 2023. So certainly the process is underway. We will stay close with the team. It is a fairly pervasive new standard for the municipal sector as a whole, and certainly be available to provide the assistance to the team as may be required. Moving into the appendices, we'll stop very briefly on page number 23, which is Appendix 1, Other Required Communications. So in order for us to be engaged as your external auditor, we need to be independent and make sure that we maintain our independence throughout the process. So to the extent we might provide any non-audit services to the town through the course of the year, we certainly can, but never put ourselves in a position of making management decisions. Pleased to report here this evening, we have not been engaged to provide any such non-audit services, so there's certainly nothing from our perspective that might be thought to encroach on our independence. And that takes us really to the probably the most important piece in our report here tonight, which starts on page number 24. It should say Appendix 1A, Draft Auditor's Report at the top of the page. This is reproduced in the financial statements as well, but certainly this is really our single deliverable that will be attached to the financial statements here tonight in draft. But you can see in terms of our opinion, based on the findings that we've articulated here this evening, in our opinion, we believe the financial statements do present fairly in all material respects the financial activities of the town for the year ended December 31, 2022. The body and content of our report has not changed from previous years, and again, it will be dated the date upon which council will accept and approve the financial statements, which is slated for February the 20th, 2024. The balance of our report are more informational items, and perhaps I will pause here and welcome any questions from the group if there are any, Madam Chair. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Peter?
Madam Chair, thank you. First, thank the staff and the auditors for their work in this. Secondly, to let the public know that if they want a full copy of the audit, just go to today's meeting schedule. It's all there, all 100 and plus pages. It's good reading. And my question was around the asset retirement obligations and the new standard for last year that you'll be looking at for us. I guess my question is, as a lay person, could you give me another example that would help me understand? One, I'm interested in, does it or how does it relate to the town's asset management plan? And two, the asset retirement obligation, could you give me a practical example? I know you mentioned the asbestos. Is there something else you could explain to help me and the public understand just what this new standard is? I read it a few times and it's not sinking in the way I'd like.
Sure, through you, Madam Chair. I'll give it a try and hopefully provide some more clarity. So asbestos is a good example. I like to use that one because I would say municipals are sort of the last ones to come on board on this new standard. This new standard came into play March 31, 2023. So we've gone through the Marches, which are health, which are colleges. We've gone through school boards, which is August. And I would say 98% of the liability in each of those cases tends to come from asbestos. So today, asbestos is likely considered in terms of ongoing maintenance. However, what the standard does require you to do is to come up with an estimate of how much that would cost to remediate at some point in the future and actually put the liability on the book. So if we think about debits and credits, and I won't get too granular, if we come up with, based on the portfolio of assets in the town's records, maybe the number will be $5 million. So there are transitional provisions, but at the end of the day, your balance sheet at the end of 2023, all other things being equal, would have a new liability of $5 million. Now, it doesn't necessarily need to be funded right away, and that piece will come in over time. It's not necessarily a cash number. So I often get questions from council to say, what is this going to do to our budget? I actually wouldn't suggest that it's going to be significantly different. And then where the other side of the entry goes, that's going to be a conversation with the team, because there are transitional provisions that will allow for differing accounting treatments. Other things that will be in scope with the standard that we do tend to see more commonly, if there's anything in the ground will be subject to regulation or legislation that will require to have something done to it at some point in the future. So if we think of wells in certain cases or septic systems, those things would be part of the standard as well. But I'd say in the grand scheme of things, certainly a lot smaller than what we're seeing related to asbestos. So how this ties out with your asset management plan, it sort of does, but it sort of doesn't, is what I would say. So your asset listing is certainly a good spot for us to check completeness, but how you are doing your asset management relative to asset retirement, they sort of go a little bit together, but certainly not hand in hand, one for one. Caitlin, is there anything you might want to add on that step?
No, I think that's exactly it. I think the only thing I would add is within your asset management plan and within your system, there is the opportunity just to link those retirement obligations to the underlying asset. So that will give management that sort of completeness or that comfort check on both sides on when they do the asset retirement obligations, but then also the ability to link it to their asset management plan so they can monitor the expected costs that are required to retire that asset and do the assessment of the timelines of when that will happen. And I would say that would be the biggest connection between those two items.
Or I wonder if we could take the deck off now so we could see, or the public can see who we are. I had one more question, if I may. On your slide number 4, in the bottom right-hand corner, you talk about other financial reporting matters, and you refer to complies with the financial reporting framework. Is a financial reporting framework just a generic term to describe all financial reporting, or is there a specific framework that you're referring to there?
That's another good question through you, Madam Chair. So the financial reporting framework we would be referring to here would be Canadian Public Sector Accounting Standards, which are required to be followed in financial statement, general purpose financial statements, in accordance with local governments such as municipals.
Capital R, capital F. Got it. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Jay, you have some comments? Can't hear you.
He's muted.
No.
All right.
In a minute. No. Sir Miller? Yes?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just while we're waiting for that to resolve itself, I just want to say thanks to staff and to our auditors for their work on this. We have been reminded this is for the 2022 calendar year, so just wondering where we're at for the 2023 year. And I'm looking at CAO Morris because I'm guessing he might have the answer versus our auditors.
Yeah, through the chair, great question. So we're probably looking at starting, depending on the schedule of our auditors, probably in June. But my prediction is we'll be here much earlier than the 23s will be brought forward much earlier than 22 did.
So I've let them come back. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
Okay. So the question I had, if I can remember, if you guys could speak to some of the comparables you let at the end of your slide deck, and I'm looking at, I think, page 35 through 39. And in reading them, I'm not sure if doesn't look that good for us. So can you speak to the comparables that you put forward for Empire, Carlton Place, and Gananoque and us?
Yes, absolutely. Through the chair, I can help answer that. And I think first, before we get into them, the important thing that I want to emphasize is that this is a bit outdated information now, as it does pull from the municipal financial information returns. So because we're looking at 2022, the comparables are based on 2021 and earlier. So I just wanted to preface that before we get started. But I'm happy to flip through them, and I'll keep it quick and high level, and then we can answer any additional questions if there are any. So the first item we did highlight in our report is the financial assets to liabilities ratio, which is really a solvency ratio and demonstrates resources that are available to meet current and upcoming obligations. As you can see, we did, I think the bottom part of that, we did do a good 5-year trend analysis, which I think is the meaningful component. You can start to see significant improvements on the town's end. So while you might look at it and see that they might be below peers, I think the important takeaway is that there is significant improvement and those ratios are improving year over year. And we did continue to see that trend in 2022 as well, just to do the link to the current year. The next ratio we did highlight would be the reserves and reserve funds by household. This one is a ministry benchmark that really provides an assessment of the town's ability to cover any incremental or unexpected expenses with funds set aside in reserves rather than increasing tax rate, increasing user charges, or issuing debt. The benchmark or the amount for the town, again for 2021, was $3,600 per household, which is really in the middle range of the peers we compared to, which were the town of Empire, the town of Carlton Place, and the town of Gananoque. So again, nothing concerning when you look at that ratio by any stretch. If you continue to look on in our report, the next one we did highlight is the total operating expenses as a percentage of taxable assessment. And this ultimately indicates the extent to which any increases in operating expenses would correspond with a related increase in taxable assessments. If you were to look at that graph, the town of Smith Falls is sitting about 2.76%, which compared to peers, which range between about 1.27 and 2.27%, it is slightly on the higher range, but I would say certainly not off base, given that it's about 1% to 1.5% different. So it's still a healthy place to be and does indicate that the town can continue to fund increases in operating costs without having to rely on increased tax rates or user charges. The next and final item we did highlight in our report would be the total taxation as a percentage of total assessment, which really is just an indicator of the town's overall rate of taxation. Again, sometimes I find when you look at the graphs, it seems like there's a larger gap than there is. The town is sitting at about 1.9%, and peers were anywhere between 1% to about 1.4%. So again, not a significant difference overall when you actually compare the overall percentages. A higher percentage would limit the town's ability to generate incremental revenues in the future. However, a percentage of less than 2%, again, nothing concerning with respect to that ratio. Are there any additional questions on those?
Councillor Brennan, we can't hear you.
Okay, it's okay.
No, we can now. Can. Did you have a follow-up question? Councillor Brennan? No, you're fine. Anyone else? No other comments, questions? Thank you, ladies. That was a lot of work. We really appreciate seeing this. It certainly gives us something to watch and take in, and we'll look forward to hearing from you again when we move on with our next audit report. Thank you so very much, Lori and
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of your evening. Bye for now.
It's public comment to ask me questions.
So
It's not.
I would like to add that we did have a surplus, operating surplus in 2022. So when we bring this back, we'll make recommendations on how to allocate the surplus, and we have financial policies that dictate how we do so. So we'll as staff, will report on that and advise on how we should disperse the surplus.
Thank you for that. Okay, thank you so much. Moving forward, we have Shelley Bradley and Krista Dales Donnelly here for the Old Home Week Task Force. Welcome, ladies. Can I just before you start, can you hear now? Can you
I
hear?
can hear you better, yeah. Is the public not allowed to ask the auditors questions? Or why were we not allowed to ask questions? If we pay our taxes and we, take part in this, do we not also get the voice to ask a question? Because certain questions that we may or may not have had weren't asked. Now, that gentleman did ask a couple questions that I had, but I did have outstanding questions. So I'm just curious as to why it's moving along so quickly and we don't have an input.
Can I turn this over to our CAO,
Sure.
please? Thank you.
So our procedural bylaw dictates that these types of discussions are for council, and if a member of the public has questions about it, you can certainly submit those questions. Alternatively, you can come as a delegation on your own and ask those questions. But typically, it's the elected officials that interact with the consultant, in this case, the auditor, not the general public. But certainly, if you have questions, we'll answer those questions.
At what point?
Again, you can write to us with those questions and we'll answer you, or
Why
you
are we
can,
not able to address it right now? It makes the most sense.
well, it's a time management issue, quite frankly. If everyone had an opportunity to ask questions, we'd never get through.
I apologize that you'd have to answer some questions.
I didn't
I'm
deny
sure
answering
salary
your
would be
questions.
able
I
to
said there's a process to
accommodate.
answer your question. No one's denying you an answer to your
It
question.
just seems like they're unnecessary barriers to
Perhaps so.
communication.
But that process is fairly typical with municipal government.
That's all some legal mumbo jumbo. It would just be a little more common sense if we were able to converse back and forth like civil human beings.
If you want to come to the next meeting as a delegation, you can have that conversation for sure.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
through you, Madam Chair, I'd be pleased to meet with you outside of this and explain in great detail.
Thank you so much.
And we can, okay, thank you.
thank you. Thank you. Welcome.
Madam Chair, councillors. I will speak not for Shelley, but with Shelley and the committee regarding Old Home Week. We are happy to answer any questions about the Old Home Week 2025 budget that was presented, that's up on the screen. Reminding that we have our festival August 2nd to 9th, 2025, and we've requested a financial investment of $1,000 from the town. And as we outlined, we expect a total budget of about $200,000. If there's more detail you want again, or if you want to get right into questions.
Questions around the table?
Councillor Brennan, I think, had questions.
Councilor Brennan, do you have a question?
Well, yeah, I just, I actually put this on, Krista. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Good. Tonight, just so you could talk about the budget, what you're planning to do, and to see if colleagues, we had a meeting 2 weeks ago, I think, that we had, I realize that you're a committee of council, and I appreciate that, but we had a meeting a couple of weeks ago, I think it was 5 hours long, and people were asking for public money, all good projects, and this one's included. So I thought that it would be important for the Old Home Week Committee to come and talk about their plans and what they plan to do with their budget. So that's why I asked that this be put on.
Madam Chair, Does that mean you want me to just do an overview of our plans, or did you have something specific around the proposed budget?
How be it if you just do an overview? That would be great. Thank you.
So our initial ask was 50,000, and that was based on our research. Our total budget was based on the fact that in 2000, our budget for the 2000 Old Home Week festival was 100,000. So we safely assumed that 200 might be reasonable 25 years later. And the request for 40,000, which, knowing that everyone wanted to reduce the ask, we went to 40,000. And so what we're trying to do in 2024 is set up for 2025. So in 2024, we will need to do deposits on things like entertainment, parade, other events. And for example, based on the research that we've done over the last 8 months, that bands can be $1,000 for a parade, and we plan to have 2, possibly 3 parades. Entertainment, drone show, which we had hoped would be one of the highlights. It's a minimum deposit of 30% of a $30,000, which we think is a reasonable amount based on what we know fireworks have been and what other shows have been. So having to put this money down in 2024 means that we can secure the kind of entertainment that we may only see every 25 years, that we want to provide for the community. And there are administration costs for all of us. We have 10 volunteers right now and hope to have more in the future that are using their own resources right now. So we had hoped to have, a phone and, laptop and that sort of thing that will help us present ourselves on behalf of the town in as professional way as we possibly can. We have the things that speak to Old Home Week, things like the Midway and the parade and nightshirt parade and those kinds of things are the staples. So we want to invest in those things early. It's not that we're not going to be doing fundraising, because we're already doing some of that now and reaching out for partnerships with local industry, small, medium, and large, to partner with us in terms of paying for some of these things. Some of the people we've talked to have said we're all in, and you saw some of the, or know of some of the support letters that we received. They aren't necessarily prepared to talk about cash until later in the year, potentially because they don't know what their year is going to be like. So it was all around trying to get off the ground. We have to develop sponsorship packages. We've already, with the money that council approved for 2023, a small amount that we were able to do a banner, get a few t-shirts, so that as we go out, we look professional and we're able to present ourselves in a way that would make everyone proud. So that's the idea for 2024. We will potentially be back in 2025. But in order to get started, to even do fundraising and create partnerships, we need some money to do that, and we want to secure the best talent possible for 2025. When we're talking to people now, they're saying, oh, if it was 2024, we're already booked. So they're happy that we're talking to them about 2025. So we can get some really high-end talent and things that we won't see at other times, because we want to really invest in this, and we want the town to, as you already have with the money and with your support through town staff. Does that answer some of that, Jay?
Councillor
Madam
Miller,
Chair.
you have a question?
Thanks so much for your work on this. I think I might be one of the few that actually hasn't been to an Old Home Week celebration, so bear with me while I try to get my head around it. I've done a lot of event work in my career, obviously, and just wondering about the reality of doing a whole week's worth of events, and whether you've considered maybe a long weekend worth of events, or if you can kind of walk me through. Yeah, it's very resource heavy, right? To have enough volunteers and enough sponsorships, and in a town of 10,000 folks, that to me seems challenging. And I'm wondering if you've talked that through.
Sure, Madam Chair. Yes, it is going to be very challenging. And yes, it will require a lot of volunteers and a lot of work on behalf of town staff and us. But this has happened every 25 years since 1925. I don't consider it negotiable. We have to do Old Home Week. What that looks like will depend on what we're able to do based on the volunteers and the money. So we have the staples that have been at all of them, most of them, a piece of all of them. 2025 will be 100 years from the initial one. August 3rd was the parade in 1925, and we'd like there to be a parade in 2025. We see this as continuing, and we're actually developing a plan to make sure that this continues in maybe a better organized fashion than it has been carried forward in the past, learning what we have. I don't consider it negotiable in terms of it's a week. What it will look like over that week will depend, because they all look different, right, based on resources.
Peter, you don't-
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. And I want to thank Councillor Brennan for putting this back on the agenda. Any chance we can get to promote Old Home Week is a good opportunity. And for those who don't know, anybody who's ever lived here, been associated with Smiths Falls and region, is invited to come back home for that week. And there's postcards going out this year. Book your rooms early. This it's no surprise. This will be my third Old Home Week that I participated in. It's a task force of the town, and we really appreciate. And I represent council at any time. I know the committee or I will be happy to answer questions. You'll be hearing more updates. So it's a very unusual thing in Canada to see these. There's a Carleton Place has one. I think they might, I'm not going to knock them, but they might have skipped having them. It's unusual to go every 25 years, but that just makes it so special. And if you'd been around for the last 2 or 3, they're quite unforgettable, and everybody comes home. And the beauty of it is all the new people or people that have moved here since the last one, it becomes their home and it's their Old Home Week, and it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
Madam Chair, if I could speak to that, you're absolutely right. It's some of us speak of it like we already know it. We do have our meetings every third Tuesday of the month, which the public is welcome to come to, and that is really starting to take shape now in terms of some significant tasks, so people are welcome to come to that. You can find us on social media. We have a website. And again, the goal is to bring everyone home, and it's also to introduce Smiths Falls to new people as well. And we know people come from all over the world. And we also want to highlight our local industry, past and present. And we also want to get to know the new people in town, which has been significant in the last few years. So this would be a really good way to do it, is to get involved. And it is something that we are really proud of that we do every 25 years.
Any other questions? Jay, did you have anything else that you needed answered?
No, I'm thanks for coming, Kristen, and you know, it's just to get it out there. I went through your terms of reference today, and I look forward to regular reports from you guys as we go forward. And like, I'm not quite as old as Councillor McKenna, but this will be my 3rd one as well, so looking forward to it.
CAO? Morris?
Yeah, I'm just thinking maybe it would be helpful for council if the task force had and I believe it's underway, an overall budget for the event and how 40,000 fits into the overall budget, and maybe more importantly, what the expectation might be for 2025 in the budget, offset against sponsorships, that kind of, so a global budget, I think that's underway if I'm not mistaken. Might answer some of those questions about how is the 40,000 being leveraged into something bigger? Would that be helpful?
Yes. I see nodding heads on that, yes.
Madam Chair, speaking to CAO Morse, did you want something by a certain time or something in us?
I know it's volunteer driven, so I would suggest whatever's comfortable for the group. I don't think there's an urgency for it, if I can speak on behalf of council. Just more of a global picture of what the total budget is expected to be. So I would think, you know, a couple of months, would that be sufficient time?
Anything else? I think that's a great idea for a couple of reasons, because then we get to see what you're looking at as a budget. Plus, it gives you the opportunity to come back here, you talk to us, everyone sees this because this is televised, so you're putting that thought into people's heads another time, you know, you're keeping them involved and they're saying, wow, look at what they're doing, and so you're building the momentum. I think that's really great. And I do want to thank you very much, because this is a lot of work. It really is. I've never done an Old Home Week, but I used to do the Chocolate and Railway Festivals, and I know how much work it is. And we do really appreciate you doing this. We thank you and thank your committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay. Now, moving on, CAO and directors' reports. Do we have anything this evening?
We do. We seem to have a pent-up demand for advising council on what we're doing. So we'll start with Mr. Grenke, Carl Grenke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, committee. The first update this evening relates to municipal heritage. Council and those watching at home are reminded that the deadline is fast coming up on February 16th for the Heritage Committee's first essay contest, which is directed at grade 11 and 12 students and entails a minimum 500-word essay describing their favorite property. In addition to helping expand our own knowledge base on heritage properties, I like this contest in that it gives students the opportunity to think about their own sense of place and how heritage is relevant to each of us. We look forward to be awarding the winner of the contest at our council meeting on March 4th. Secondly, the Heritage Committee is taking the first steps on planning its yearly symposium for 2024. This year, the committee is looking to get a jump on planning it and will likely have a theme in mind confirmed by the March meeting. The one thing that we need are volunteers to help plan and also to sit on the Municipal Heritage Committee. At this point, the committee is at its minimum size prescribed by the Ontario Heritage Act to fulfill its statutory mandate. And with the planning for their events and the development of the Heritage Conservation District study process, it's a very interesting time to be involved and a very fulfilling time to be involved in shaping the direction of heritage conservation in the town. The terms of reference do allow for the appointment of up to 2 council representatives in addition to public and youth members. So if you or someone you know might be interested in applying, please have them reach out to myself or Clerk Costello for an application. My third update relates to building services. I'm letting council know that our chief building official has been working with residents and permit holders to close inactive building permit applications. Earlier this month, letters were sent, 377 in total, to holders of all open building permits applied for up to and including 2022. As of around noon today, Mr. Willows has dialogued with about 20% of the recipients of the letters, and 35 permits have since closed. While the Building Code Act ultimately assigns responsibility to applicants to get their inspections completed, this relates to safety, and as such, it is a time-consuming but important piece of the housekeeping work that does need to be done periodically. Staff are advising council of this outreach in the event that councillors receive an inquiry from a resident. That concludes my update for this evening.
Do we have any questions? No? Thank you, Carl.
Thank you.
Next, we have Director McMahon.
Thank you, CEO Morris, and good evening, Madam Chair and members of council. Just wanted to give council a quick update on winter control operations. I don't know that we're going to get much more in the way of winter, but nonetheless, it's been good for us that way since we had that large storm there after Christmas, where it dumped about 12 inches of snow on us. So as we know, I tried to kind of rejig our winter control operations for this year, tried something new. I wouldn't say it wasn't successful. It wasn't, there were some challenges with it. So we pivoted, we created a bit of a hybrid model. We've yet to exhibit that through operations because we haven't had enough snow to really put it into place. But what I mean by a hybrid model is we're going to revert back to the way that we used to plow the road concurrent with the sidewalk at the same time, where we'd run the large trucks to plow the sidewalk to push the snow back. Not everywhere, and that's what I mean by a hybrid model. There'll be areas of town where we have to plow the road, gutter the snow, and then plow the sidewalk independently of the roadway. So staff have went around and they've kind of done an inventory of what streets will work for one process and which streets will work better for the other process. But like I say, we've yet to implement that. We've got a plan moving forward. The last thing I want to do is, the last part of that I want to do for council is to draft a winter control policy to bring forward. And I've been saying that since I started, but it's something I kind of been working off on the corner of my desk as I've got here. Lots of work ahead of us for sure. But that's something that will be pending in the future to bring forward for council's consideration and just to formalize it. So if we do get calls from the public, we can say there is a policy. This is our framework for how we conduct winter control operations going forward. And that's my update.
Councillor Miller, please.
Thank you, Director McMahon. Thanks for trying something new. And some of these things work and some of them don't. So keep the new ideas coming. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, the third of 4 updates comes from our Manager of Economic Development and Tourism, Julia Crouch.
Thank you, Sierra Morrison. Good evening, Council. I have 2 quick updates. I just wanted to update Council on the successful workshop session we had today at the Community Centre. It was Strategic Planning 101 for local organizations. We had about 30 attendees. It was really well done, and it was in partnership with OMAFRA, which is the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Affairs. And we're planning our 3rd session in the series, which will be March 25th, and that will focus on grant writing for local organizations, how they can use tools and resources in order to be better successful at grant writing. The second one is staff attended the EDCO conference in Toronto last week, and we were fortunate enough and honored enough to be asked by the board to present about the community and the pivoting that we've done over the last 15 years, including the rise and fall of Canopy and Hershey's and kind of that success story and all the great things the town has done in order to, come 15 years and be really successful nowadays. So that's my update.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you. Okay, moving forward.
Madam Chair, we have one more.
I'm sorry.
We have Fire Chief Cheeseborough.
Thank you, Sierra Morrison. I have 4 quick updates for you this evening. We have received the draft renewal for the automatic gate agreement that we are currently in with Drummond North Elmsley. I'm expecting that will be signed and pushed ahead. We'll bring the report to council for that. So that's one less renewal we have to worry about. We have completed the 2023 Fire Department's annual report. It's very detailed. The last one that we had done, I know Councillor McKenna had a couple questions with regards to including some content. We have included that in this one, so this will be released shortly and put it on the website. The third one is we have submitted a grant application through Hydro One. They were providing grant funding up to $25,000. They needed a detailed proposal on the type of training or equipment that would benefit the community or help save the community with regards to electrical emergencies or things caused by electrical emergencies. Previously, we had a fire extinguisher simulator that we used to train the general public and businesses, anywhere between 500 to 1,000 people a year, on the proper use, the proper design, the care and maintenance, and the proper type to have in place. So we have submitted that as our proposal to the grant for the grant application. I will say that we will not be purchasing it unless we receive the total amount that we've submitted that falls within the grant application. And the final item comes as no surprise. With the new radio system, we received a draft request for dispatching services. That'll be going before the municipal council that has requested that on the end of February. So we're quite hopeful. They're seeking to sole source with Smith Falls. It has been determined by the communications that we have the equipment to do that. And hopefully that goes to their council, so we'll know at the end of February if we're successful in receiving that first one of hopefully many to come. That is my updates.
Any questions? Thank you very much. I'm sorry, I was getting ahead of myself. Do you have some report?
No, that's it, Madam Chair. Thank you.
So I can move on now. Thank you. All right. Moving on to priority issues. We have compensation review results, and this is with.
Good evening. Tonight I'm here to present to you the compensation review results. Just reminding council, you'll recall back in 2023, in September 2023, you awarded this project to Gallagher Benefit Services, and they completed a full compensation review for the non-union positions. Since then, the consultant has completed job evaluations to establish foundation for internal equitable salary structure, a market assessment to determine competitive placement and inform job rates, pay equity analysis to confirm and document compliance obligations, and completed a salary grid that is fair, compliant, competitive, and affordable. Tonight, I'm happy to say that they met the expectation of that request for proposal, and they've submitted the deliverables from the RFP, which ensures that we are now compliant with the Pay Equity Act, established a fair and competitive compensation policy, established the updated salary grid, and the job evaluation tool. The salary grid and band structure will be consistent with what we currently have as far as the structure being a 6-step program. They also made a recommendation to council, looking at our current market and current experience recruiting talent. Gallagher has recommended pay policy in the 55th percentile, which would position the town to be competitive in the market and to attract and retain talent. So following adoption of these recommendations from council, staff will return in the future with a non-union salary administration policy that includes the current recommendation to identify as a 55th percentile employer, and the understanding between council and staff respecting core pay principles, our compensation philosophy for the non-union staff. Following adoption of the 2024 budget, the new pay grid system will be implemented for the non-union staff, and we will be provided a tool from Gallagher to assess and evaluate new positions as we move forward. This whole project was budgeted for in the 2023 budget, and it's expected that this project will come in on budget.
Thank you. Questions? Councilor Menashe.
Thanks, Nadine. I appreciate this. This is really important work. So I support your recommendation. Will you be bringing a draft pay policy forward in the future for our review?
Yes, I will. Yeah. There's some other ideas that we're looking at. We are working on the employment bylaw, so just making sure that that wording is consistent between the policies, so it will all come forward in the near future.
Thank you. Councilor Robinson.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Great work. I support it. And we need to ensure that we're paying these people the correct amount of money in order that we can retain them, because we're losing people to other municipalities because our pay grade wasn't in line. So I'm in full support.
Thank you. Councilor McKenna.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks, Nadine. I too support the recommendation, and I have a question that it's a little counter to Councilor Miller's. If we approve this recommendation, as you've stated, we accept the Gallagher's report and the P55 differential to market rate, because I understand that. I just wondered about the value. Then it becomes, for me, we've agreed on the principle, the oversight. I'm just wondering why we would need to get involved in approving an operational policy that seems to fall more under human resources and the CAO and yourself. So I'm just, if we've set the stage by approving the report, and the recommendations in it, I don't feel a need to, and as long as I'm getting annual or assurances that we're maintaining pay equity, I don't feel a need to see all the human resource policies or to set them here. So it's more of a question.
Okay. Yeah, certainly. I can answer the best of my ability, and then certainly CEO Morris may add to that. That was past practice, right? The original policy was adopted around the 1990s, and then our employment bylaw as well. But certainly, we will take the directive of council moving forward, and CEO Morris may have something to add to that.
Yeah, thank you. So that's a really good point. So obviously the role of council is to set the policy, and if percentile 55 is the policy, you're about to do that, it sounds like. So the rest of it is implementation. It doesn't need to come back to council, in my view. As Nadine mentioned, that's been the practice in the past. But we're certainly comfortable as staff as simply moving on to the implementation part and possibly bringing something back for information purposes. And the policy becomes relevant when we begin discussions with our non-union group to understand what's in the policy. But that can be done in a different fashion. It doesn't have to be a formal approval from council. So we could certainly take our direction from council. My suggestion is to keep it an administrative matter, or make it an administrative matter, and we can keep council informed.
Madam Chair, if I may, I have confidence in our expertise in human resources and the CAO, and I'm not an expert in developing staff policy and the nuances of that. So I was a little surprised that we were doing it, but I understand the rationale. That's the way we used to do it, or it's the way we always do it. So I'd be, and if staff came back and said, here's the policy for your information, that's fine. I would read it and understand it, and I'd ask questions if I had them, but I just don't feel the need to be involved in the developing or approving of it. There's my personal view.
So perhaps if what I would suggest is that what we're asking for tonight is to accept the report that Gallagher completed, which implies you are in agreement with the policy. So really all we need to do is bring back the overarching policy, but we'll keep the implementation piece out of it. If there's a comfort level with that, that's what we'll do. So tonight, and in hindsight, we could have done both this evening, but I think this just gives you an opportunity to consider accepting the report first and foremost, then we'll enshrine it in policy at a future meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan, please.
Thank you, and that's a good point that Councillor McKenna made. However, I think it is a change in the overall policy, and I think it's important to be transparent about with the public about what we're doing for our employees, and actually to attract some more employees. But I think it was great work, Nadine, and thank you very much. And I really don't, as CEO Moore said, I really don't need to see it again. We've entrenched the policy, so you implement it.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, listening to all this, it was very interesting. It really was very interesting, and it was a lot of information to take in, and we do thank you for doing that. And yes, I agree. The administration should be with administration, and then you bring us the information to keep us up to date. That sounds great. Thank you. No, don't run away.
Okay.
So we have electronic monitoring policy reports.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for letting me bring this forward as well. There's lots of policy updates coming, so it's great. This is a policy that we're required to implement as per the Employment Standards Act. And as the report details, this policy will be shared with all the employees. respecting how the organization monitors electronic devices, including computers, cell phones, and I should state that's company cell phones, GPS systems, and cameras. So the draft policy was presented to staff back in December of 2022, and then again in December of 2023. We also followed up by an email providing an opportunity to staff to make comment, and no comments or concerns have been received to date. So we're now seeking council's support to bring forward this policy for adoption, and then we'll do an education again to all staff so they're aware of the process and how we will be monitoring them.
Thank you. Councillor Miller.
Sorry, Nadine, I think I'm not catching something. So you're bringing us a policy, but I don't see the policy there. And the Employment Standards Act says that we just have to have a policy.
That's correct.
I'm not clear then on what you're asking for.
Oh, sorry. I thought the policy was attached to the report. So, yes, the Employment Standards Act set the tone for this. And then the Working for Workers Act also received royal assent in April of 2022, whereby any employer 25 employees or more must demonstrate this greater transparency, where they establish this policy stating where we will be monitoring staff, i.e. through, the company laptop or the organization laptop, their cell phone, GPS units on our town vehicles. We also have cameras throughout the facilities. And so we have to demonstrate to staff where we're doing that and that transparency of how we're obtaining that information and keeping that information.
DA Olmos.
If I could just ask the clerk, was the policy attached to the report?
No, never received the policy.
Oh,
this is how
okay.
it was.
That's the source of the misunderstanding here. We had an actual policy that was attached to the report, but it seems it did not make it onto the agenda.
My apologies. I thought I had PDF'd attached it, so somehow it didn't get there. But yes, so
what I might suggest, Madam Chair, is if we could defer this item. It's not time sensitive.
no, it's not. It's something that we just had to have in place. So sorry about that. Sorry for the confusion.
It's completed. It simply wasn't attached to the cover report, so our apologies.
No problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks.
Now we have rescinding of local improvement bylaw, and this is
Our interim treasurer could not be here this evening, so I'm going to tell you what I know about this subject.
perfect.
So back in 2021, actually before that, the developer of the Woods Avenue area and the future Maple Ridge subdivision wanted to expand, but we had some hydraulic and infrastructure constraints on Wood Avenue to allow the adjacent development to continue, or to start actually. So there were, I think, 18 properties along this section of Wood Avenue that were affected by the need to upgrade, I think, both the sanitary and to install a storm sewer. It was open ditches at that point. So we researched at the time different mechanisms to fund a project like this, and council at the time decided on staff's recommendation the best vehicle to do that was what's called a local improvement charge. And the theory behind a local improvement charge is the benefiting property owners contribute to the cost of the upgrade. So that's exactly what we did. Since that time, the work has been completed. The monies from those properties that were not owned by the developer, I believe he owned 18 of the 25, if I'm not mistaken. We collected the charge from those properties. The work went ahead. It's been finished. So at this point, we want to rescind the bylaw, because the local improvement charge is on title to the property, and it serves from a legal point of view as a lien on the property. Naturally, those homeowners don't want a lien on their property, even though it's been fulfilled. So this is rescinding the bylaw so that we take the local improvement charge policy for this roadway away, because the work is finished.
Thank you. No questions?
just very supportive of this. It's almost housekeeping just to get this tidied up and off of their property titles.
Councillor Brennan?
Yeah, I support it as well. It's just unfortunate there's 6 houses on Marguerite Street that were left out of that particular improvement. So hopefully we can revisit that in the near future.
Thank you. So
this will come forward, given the nodding heads at the next council meeting.
perfect. Moving on, application for funding, FCM feasibility study report, and this is with Director McMahon, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, this is a fairly brief report this evening. So staff are requesting council support for staff to apply for funding through FCM, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, for a biochar-based desalination feasibility study at the compost site. So the compost site being the site where everybody takes their leaf and yard waste and brush out on County Road 43, just outside of town, adjacent to the cemetery. So we've already submitted a kind of a preface to the feasibility study to FCM. They'd asked for a little bit of information. They want to review that. Then they want to come back and say whether or not our concept is something that they could support through funding. So we've done that to date. I'm just trying to get out ahead of, based on timing, should we hear back from FCM that they're going to support us submitting a feasibility, or sorry, apply for funding to develop a feasibility study, that we have that already completed and we've already got council's endorsement to do so. So a couple things are happening here. We've got that particular site has historically been one of our snow dumps for operations, for winter control operations. And of course, with snow melt, we have salt that's incorporated into the snow, and we have an adjacent water body. So the Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Parks, they're aware of this. They want us to do a feasibility study. They want to see how we're going to mitigate any salt impact to the environment from our snow dump. So that's kind of one fold. The second part of that is we have brush that we process on an annual basis. We chip it, we transport it, gets used as daily cover at a neighboring municipal landfill site. So I believe council's heard us talk of biochar before, where we bring in an apparatus, we burn down that brush at a particular temperature, and it creates char, much like different but kind of same as what you'd pull out of your wood stove if you had a wood burning stove at home. And that biochar can actually be used to sequester a number of different things in the ground and in the environment, to pull it into the biochar. And there's organisms within that biochar that eat different elements within the makeup of the ground. So we're thinking that there's proven information, scientific documentation out there that biochar can work to mitigate the impacts of salt, and it can eat the salt. So we think this is a really good project. We think it's something that FCM will be interested in, and us developing a feasibility study for this process that we want to implement in town. And down the road, it could be a case of, we open up our compost site to other municipalities to bring in brush to convert it into biochar. Who knows? The options are there down the road should this be something that's feasible. With that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Councillor Robinson.
Thank you. I've been waiting for this to come along ever since we got a presentation from Peter Howe regarding biochar. And I was absolutely amazed at how something so inexpensive can do so much good for the environment. So I'm in full support of going ahead with that.
Yes.
I see thumbs up all around. I think this is really interesting. I'm looking forward to it.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Great. Thank you. Okay. Municipal Heritage Committee recommendations for Confederation Bridge, and this is with Manager Carl Grenke, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My report this evening is presented on behalf of the Municipal Heritage Committee regarding the Confederation Bridge. As discussed by Committee of the Whole on January 15th of this year, Council is open to exploring a range of design options for the new bridge. In the last year, Council directed the removal of the existing Pony Truss style bridge and its replacement with a new bridge intended for pedestrian traffic only. As noted in the staff report, the Confederation Bridge is not designated under the Ontario Heritage Act, meaning an alteration approval process will not need to happen under the Act. However, it is listed on the town's registry as a property of interest, which incurs a 60-day pause on demolition. Nonetheless, the purpose and mandate of the Heritage Committee under the terms of reference include providing advice to Council regarding plans for properties of interest. The committee in their last 2 regular meetings discussed the bridge and the committee's vision for how the bridge forms a connection between areas of considerable historic significance to the town, and they expressed a strong desire for providing their feedback to Council on what the committee feels is an appropriate, proportionate and desirable design for the bridge. The committee's motion, which is attached to the report, does 2 things. Firstly, proposes several design criteria for Council's consideration, including an example that they liked based on a bowstring truss pedestrian bridge that was referenced in the TSI presentation in January. Secondly, the committee respectfully requested the opportunity to liaise with the design consultants when we get to that stage. Development Services and Public Works staff have been working together on the consultation aspect, and I'd like to acknowledge Director McMunn as well as the MHC members in attendance this evening for their work to get to where we're at right now. This report and the motion are presented to Council for Council's information and consideration, and I'll welcome any feedback, discussion, and direction that Council may wish to provide.
Thank you, Carl. Questions?
Thank
Councillor
you.
Miller.
Thanks, Manager Granke. I appreciate the report. This question might be more for Director McMunn, but he had mentioned that we'd hear back about design costs and moving forward by the end of February. So I'm hoping we're still on track with that. You might need to come up for the microphone. Thank you.
Yes, unfortunately, I have a couple weeks vacation coming up, so it'll likely be probably towards the last week or second week of March before I get a chance to come back to Council. So. But we are working on it. TSI are working on it in the background. Was talking with them today. Issued a very small scope change for them to do some investigative, a little more detailed investigative work with underground servicing in and around the bridge on the approaches, which is important. But yes, I will say they're working on it in the background along with myself too. So, anyways, we won't be ready for the end of February, but sometimes towards the first, second week of March.
I just have a follow-up question or comment. First of all, I'd like to thank the Heritage Committee members that are here and thank you for taking an interest in this. And I fully support having them have some input into this. And just again, to reiterate, every time we have this conversation, I'm really keen to get this project completed. You know, we were hoping to do it last year, but I really would like to get this done. It's been a bit of an eyesore sitting as is for a very long time.
If I could, Madam Chair, just one more point. Coincidentally, we do have a site meeting with the Municipal Heritage Committee tomorrow, Thursday of this week, to actually walk out on the sidewalk portion of the structure, just to get a look at the bridge, see if, in their opinion, if there's certain elements of the structure they want to use as commemorative features for the bridge. Anyway, so that's in the queue for this week.
Thank you.
Councillor McKenna, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I too, Mr. Granke, support having the Municipal Heritage Committee have the opportunity to meet with the design consultant or that small design group, whatever the process is. So I would welcome their thoughts. I really appreciated their, because the pendulum is swinging on that bridge. You know, we had a simple, almost a bow bridge, and then it went to something a little more grand, and now there's thoughts that we could bring it back to this. So I think I would really appreciate having having the opportunity to meet with the consultants. So I support the recommendation. Not necessarily the bridge they've chosen or are recommending, but the fact that they should have the opportunity to meet with the design consultant and provide some input.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan, did you have comments?
No, I just, thanks for the report, Carl, and certainly have the Heritage Committee involved.
Thank you. So, no further comments on this. It looks like everyone is in agreement that we have comment from the Municipal Heritage Committee for sure on that. Okay, thank you. Advocating digital news publication and complying with print newspaper notice requirements, and this is with Clerk Costello, please.
Thank you. This was a correspondence item that council reviewed probably back in late December, early January. And it comes around the closing of Metroland Publications. Right now, Smiths Falls is in a good place. We have a weekly publication, but there's many rural municipalities that don't have a publication. And there's a piece of legislation that strictly dictates that there has to be written publications like a newspaper. So my report this evening is looking for council to pass a resolution to have the Legislation Act updated to include online publications and not just strictly denote newspaper publications. I mean, that will help Smiths Falls in the if we're impacted by not having a weekly newspaper, but it also, if it is changed, will help many rural municipalities who don't have that luxury as well.
Comments? I think we're seeing thumbs up. Thank you very much. Update, downtown core design guidelines report, and this is with Manager Richard Grant, please.
Yes. Good afternoon, Council. The downtown core design guidelines, in a nutshell, provides a urban design framework for the land users and developers when they're looking to updating their downtown core businesses and also other structures. The main intent of the downtown core design guidelines is to help users when they're looking to do any sort of renovation or any sort of reconstruction or infill development in the downtown core. The guidelines on their own are not mandatory or regulatory. However, they support and provide direction to applicants for municipal incentive programs such as the Community Improvement Plan and guide urban design considerations to support Planning Act applications. Staff are requesting that Council pass a bylaw adopting the updated downtown core design guidelines as presented in this report. Are there any questions?
Questions? Councillor Miller?
Thank you. Thank you, Richard, for your work on this. I appreciate it. I saw that you have, I'll start over. You had some consultations, thank you. So my question's kind of two parts. One, were any concerns raised by our friends at the Municipal Heritage Committee? And the second is I did get some feedback from the DBA, and I'm not sure if they shared that with you, but I can share it with you tonight.
I did not actually. When I had circulated the DBA, the general comments I got was that it was generally very long.
Okay.
So that was just the first one.
Okay. So I just reached out to them this week, and they really liked it. Their only concern was that storefronts be painted in neutral colors, and I can appreciate that that's a heritage piece as well.
Yes.
But we have seen in neighboring communities where that has caused some contention. And so I understand these are guidelines, but I wonder if they quickly become rules, and then do we end up in a bit of a pickle?
So I think with the colors, if you're looking for, let's say, CAP applicants, when they're looking for facade improvements, that's when it becomes a little bit more contentious because they're looking to, get approved, right? So it only ever becomes a rule if it becomes a practice or a norm. So so long as people are keeping in mind that these are only guidelines and that they're not regulatory, I think my comments about colors could be addressed on a case-by-case basis. And the reason why the colors was put into the guidelines is so that people could understand more or less the context of where and how they're putting the colors in the sense that you're trying to be more mindful of the context, really. So, for example, if you wanted an ice cream shop and it's pink, obviously to take in mind the surrounding environment and whether or not it matches. Would it be denied on the basis of it being pink? Debatable.
Councillor McKenna.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was thinking about the Heritage District designation, and I'm wondering how this aligns with that, so how do they complement each other, or is there potential for discrepancies there?
At the very best, if let's say if the Heritage District comes to fruition as Council intends, that would be the superseding policy first. So the guidelines would not be able to trump any sort of comments that we'd be trying to comply with the district. And
if I may, so if need be, we could adjust the design guidelines to ensure that it was in compliance with it?
Yes,
Okay.
it has to harmonize.
That's great. I'm supportive of the recommendation. Thank you.
Councillor Brennan? Thumbs up. We're seeing thumbs up. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
Visitor Services Delivery Options Report. This is with Manager Crowder, please.
Good evening again, members of council. I'm back tonight to have a further discussion about visitor service delivery within the town of Smith Falls as it relates to our agreement with the Chamber of Commerce. So the recommendation before council is that council of the corporation of the town of Smith Falls pass a bylaw authorizing mayor and clerk to execute an agreement, an amendment to the memorandum of understanding with the Smith Falls and District Chamber of Commerce for the delivery of marina and visitor services at Victoria Park in the amount of $45,000 per year for the remainder of the current agreement term until October 2026. So there's a lot of background within the report. We executed an agreement in 2022 with the Chamber to continue marina services at Victoria Park, and that was at a cost of $12,000 to the municipality. They came back in January 2024, earlier this year, and requested that council consider an increase to that service, as well as offering additional visitor services as part of a proposed proposal. And then as part of the January 29th second draft budget presentation, staff presented a recommendation with some costing. And then we've had further conversations with staff at the chamber to better understand what the logistics and the costing is and the rationale for the $45,000 request. So at this point, we're coming back to council to recommend that that $45,000 ask be approved. In terms of the visitor services, the overall visitor service delivery within the town of Smith Falls, it's staff's recommendation that we have a full-time staff person in-house in order to deliver those services. While the chamber's proposing marketing services related to tourism delivery, there's a whole wealth of other service delivery that the town needs to provide and that we can get better at, but it can't be facilitated without a full-time person. And the Chamber of Commerce or an outside organization just wouldn't be able to facilitate the full gamut of those services. So in an effort of streamlining and be consistent and a sustainable service delivery, a full-time person is recommended. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Councilor McCann.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks very much, Manager Crowder. I'm pleased to see this revised agreement and support it. Will the contract, for lack of a better word, have exit clauses built in for both parties?
It currently does right now, and it's a 30-day written notice for either party to execute the agreement at any time.
And how do we evaluate the success of is there some kind of criteria that we'd use to say, this is working really well, or, how do we monitor the deliverables? And we all want a success and we're going to get it, but how do we monitor that or ensure that it's what we're expecting, what we're paying for?
Through you, Madam Chair, currently as part of the MOU agreement, the Chamber provides us with an annual report on the activities that they deliver at the Marina Services.
That's after the fact?
After the fact.
Okay, thank you.
And, as a partner with the Chamber, we have ongoing conversations with them and we're talking with them on
If
it.
you see something, you're going to raise it.
Exactly, yeah.
Great. It's great.
Councillor Robinson.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Julie. I was at that final meeting and there was a lot of discussion from both sides and I think both town staff and the chamber worked fairly well together to come up with some sort of compromise, and this appears to be the most effective compromise. So I'll support it.
Councillor Brennan, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, sure. I wrestled with this, and I think that we have to acknowledge the work that the chamber does and the importance they have down there, and to acknowledge that through giving their ask to make sure that the visitor services at Victoria Park are done correctly and with success. I have no doubt that it will be a success. But we have to remember that they have lost significant revenue down there since the, as I say again, the forgotten and forlorn space along the canal that used to house people from out of town is no longer in use. So I support your recommendation, Julia, and I look forward to a good relationship with the Chamber of Commerce. I think they do great work.
Other comments? CEO Morris.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a general comment that, firstly, to say as a statement that the Chamber does great work down at the marina, and we certainly wanted to see that continue. So thanks to Councillor Robinson for pulling that meeting together so we could kind of better understand what's driving the increased cost. So what I do want to say, however, is that we can absorb the increase within the budget that you've given first and second reading. The only way we're able to do that, I will caution, is that Ms. Crowder has a staff position that's been vacant. So we have some savings from there. We're going to cobble together other savings. My point is we don't have to reopen the budget to accommodate this increased service fee. But it will, when we annualize it in 2025, we're going to see the impacts of the additional costs. So I just want to give you a warning that we'll need to deal with it and absorb it into the budget, the full budget in 2025.
Anything else? Thank you very much. Great report. Thank you. AMO policy update, social and economic prosperity review report, and this is with PAO Morris.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. So this one is one of those bigger policy matters that I think is worthy of a dialogue. So AMO has already made a pre-budget submission to the province of Ontario for for their budget. And what they're asking is for a dialogue between municipalities and the province to really future-proof the prosperity and financial stability of municipalities. The taxation on real property is it's old. We've been using it since Confederation. And it works reasonably well if we stay in our own lane. But that division between municipal and provincial responsibilities has been clouded somewhat. And it started back in the 90s with the downloading. Municipalities took on, at the time, part of the cost for land ambulance. We took on more social housing costs. We took on more long-term care. We took on other social housing, Ontario Works, that's been since uploaded, ODSP. All these social programs that know no boundaries municipally. More recently, we're seeing pressure on municipalities to fund healthcare. We are not equipped to fund healthcare. Full stop. That is not something we can do. But we're being asked, and we do it. We as you know, council contributes to the capital campaign for the hospital. But in the fullness of time, if those lines get blurred any further, we're going to have trouble doing the core services that we're meant to deliver. This call to action is about having a conversation about what the future looks like of funding. Property or taxes on real property does not tend to fluctuate with inflation. It goes up when the price of a house or the value of a house goes up, but we adjust our tax rate. And so if you look at the increase in our costs compared to our ability to tax homeowners and businesses, there's an imbalance there. So the province, this isn't without precedent. The province did cut a deal. It's called the New Deal for Toronto. Despite that new deal, Toronto City Council is debating a 9.7% tax increase right now. So the 3.5 that you've approved, I think you should be very proud of that. So all in total, what I'm saying is that I think council should support this call to action, ask the province to sit down and have a discussion about what the future prosperity of municipalities look like while keeping that relationship strong. We tend to get in line for money. You know, we apply for funding all the time. Sometimes we get it, sometimes we don't. The future of our infrastructure is dependent on getting a yes or a no from a funding application, where 443 other municipalities are typically competing against us. That's not sustainable. So I think AMO is onto something really important. It's a big policy discussion that I think council should support. There's a draft resolution attached to my report, and I would encourage council to support it.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor McKenna.
Go with Councillor Brennan. He'll start.
Councillor Brennan.
Thank you. 120%. This is, I'm really happy that AMO is leading this charge. We're not the only one. And not to mention that we haven't had a updated assessment since 2016. It's not sustainable for us. And I've often said and thought that our little town council here, we're serving 9,000 people, and the county is serving, correct me, somewhere around 70,000 people, and they have nine little town councils doing that. So there may come a day when someone's going to say you're going to have to do better on that administration part of it, which I'm not sure is the right thing to do. But that being said, CEO Morris is totally correct, and the hospital is absolutely, without a doubt, the most important institution we have, and I have absolutely no problem with supporting them. However, that being said, it's not in our purview, not technically, and we have roads and streets, and I'm advocating for Marguerite Street or wherever we have sewers that we have to take care of. So there's got to be a new way to do things, and this is a good first step, and we're doing it. I read the report from AMO, and how can you help pass a resolution, meet with your MPP. I know that we had council members down at AMO in Toronto, and I know they talked to MPP Jordan, and we should continue that conversation with them, because we're not the only one, and so I totally support this, and let's do that resolution ASAP.
Councillor McKenna.
Yeah, thank you. First for CEO Morris for bringing this back up. And for our Association Municipalities of Ontario for leading the charge on our behalf. It's billions of dollars municipalities are putting into what could be considered provincial responsibilities. And about 40% of that is coming from 40% of municipal revenue comes from property taxes. It used to be, when there was a lot of industry, that the industry was like 60% of the costs would cover their taxes, would cover us. They've left and gone worldwide. And so now it's residential property taxes that are carrying the majority of this cost. And industry pays their fair share, but we just don't have as many as we used to. Nobody does. So and putting the bill on residential property owners is very regressive, because we don't know the income of those people, and they're having to pay for costs that we want our provincial partners to pay for, who have the ability to tax people based on their income, and we don't, we being municipalities. So I can't say enough that the timing's right. We're not picking a fight with the province. We're saying, let's reopen our funding agreement, have a conversation, a serious conversation, because the old one was put in place in 2008. It's time to update this. It's not sustainable. Something has to give. Or services, unfortunately, are going to be, everything will have to give, because we have to keep paying for these costs. So I'm very glad to have this, and would be happy to lead any delegation at AMO to advocate, as our mayor has already done so. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Thumbs up. Sounds great. Thank you. Okay. FCEM attendance.
Thank you. Bringing this forward this evening, as Council may know, that the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Conference is coming up in June. As per our policy, Council members can attend 2 conferences per year, and any out-of-province travel does require Council's approval. I did send this out to all of you during budget deliberations, just so we could budget appropriately, and I have, there was 3 of you who expressed interest to attend. So this evening, I just wanted to get to know who is attending, make sure Council approved all who were attending so that we could bring forward the appropriate resolution at our next meeting of Council. And a reminder that it is in Calgary from June 6th to the 9th. And I did have Councillor Quinn, Councillor McKenna, or sorry, Councillor Quinn, Councillor Robinson, and Councillor Brennan submit their names to go this year.
I'm not able to attend, thank you.
So you're kind of saying that the 3 Musketeers can.
I'm just saying, I'm not, don't put my name on the list. That's all.
So we need, who wants to attend, definitely. Okay. Yeah, we got 3.
So with the concurrence of Council, then we'll add a resolution to our next Council meeting.
Just, I don't know what the mayor's plans are. He's not present, so if we could find that out.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, now committee and boards and external organizations update. We don't have any, and we do have a correspondence item. This is the contravention of noise bylaw. We have received 2 letters from this gentleman, and this evening I'm going to call on Fire Chief Cheeseborough to give his report. He has attended this site and he has some information for us on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It has been approximately a year since we've been having correspondence exchanges with the single individual who has raised concerns with the sounding of the horn over at the Railway Museum. During the correspondence, I reviewed the noise bylaw. I've been in consultation with other staff. I visited the site. I had them start the train. I stood approximately 5 feet away from the train as the horn was sounded. And based on that, based on the use of that train, and again, in conversations with the staff over there, they run a number of groups through the train throughout the course of the year. These are individuals, children, adults that have developmental disabilities, mental disabilities. The sounding of the horn is for safety. As they're standing on the platform, the movement of that train, acknowledges that the train's about to be in motion or when the train's coming to a stop. During my correspondence with the person who's raised the concern, while they thought that answer was good, it was certainly not adequate. Again, it is my personal belief, having been there, having witnessed the movement of the train, and only receiving a single complaint over the course of the last year, I believe it is not a contravention of the noise bylaw. It certainly falls under the exemption when it comes to safety. The last thing that we would want to experience or witness is a young child or an adult or visitors coming to ride on that train, whether it be for amusement or otherwise, to get injured. And certainly it's the belief of the staff at the Railway Museum. The blowing of that is for safety.
Questions? Councillor McKenna, please.
I want to break my record, Madam Chair. Thanks very much, Chief, and I appreciate the work that's gone into it. Is there not to draw this out any further, but is there possibility that something a little more objective could be used to measure the sound other than you standing 5 feet away? Is there, so that, you know what I'm talking about, you can measure the sound decibels. And it's me, I apply it, now that you've explained it this way, as a truck or a backhoe backing up. It's got the backup, it's very loud for a reason. It's a safety, so I understand the exemption, and I do accept your explanation. I think you've done everything that we can do. And if the person would like to come as a delegation and plead, they're more than welcome. However, I just wondered if there was some way to measure the sound, and I'm not asking for it. Just question if we could end it with, or does the safety exemption just, that's the final?
Through the chair, that's an excellent question. We can seek out to find if there is a company or a group or an individual that has a decibel meter that can come in and register the sounds. There have been alternate solutions proposed by the individual on the removal of the horn from the train and placing it on the inside of the train. Again, weighing on the side of safety and on the side of caution, the exemption with regards to safety certainly is up for debate. You know, I consider it safety where the individual who's initiated this may not. Again, I think the track record that's taken place over there speaks for itself. We've had, touch wood, no instances as a result of how they're operating and what they're doing. They make it crystal clear to the occupants and the visitors that are coming there what's taking place. They limit the sounding of this horn to the movement of the train. It's not while the train's in motion. It's not when the train is stopped for prolonged periods. It's intermittent, 6-minute intervals at the start, at the conclusion, and on the moving of the train when it comes back up. So I think it is, I think there's validity in certainly my thought on that, which again is safety, but I'd be more than happy to reach out and get that as a final determination as to the effect.
CAO Morris, please.
Yeah, just thank you, Madam Chair. To augment what the chief is saying, I would just say that the policy we have does not contain a numeric decibel threshold. So we could take the measurements, but there is no standard to apply them against. So it is by nature somewhat subjective.
Okay.
But I think we would be well advised to anchor the decision on safety as opposed to is it 92 decibels versus 96.
I'm just know that there are people that are really highly sensitive to sound and trying to respect this person's issue with it. At the same time, the greater good, and but it sounds like you've done, and the Railway Museum has done everything that we could think of. I was just trying to, yeah.
Councillor Brennan?
Can you hear me? Good. Yes. Yeah, thanks, Chief. I read the letters and that sort of thing. Just to confirm, that is not the only train whistle that is heard in Smiths Falls on a daily basis, correct?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm just going to weigh in here a little bit. I completely agree with you. They do use the whistle for safety reasons, for sure. And this is something that does not happen every day. It's like periodically that they have these train rides for these train events. So it's not happening on a regular basis. And it doesn't go on till late in the evening, and it's not early in the morning. So it's a time frame there that I don't think it should be hurting anyone's lifestyle. And having talked about this, because I do know some of the Railway Museum activities, and I have 3 people that are friends and clients of mine that live right there, right on the end of Russell Street, right on the end of Church Street. They don't even notice it. They don't even notice. In fact, they think, well, you know what, that's kind of cool. The Railway Museum is busy today. They've got train rides going. So, but it definitely is a safety issue for that train whistle to be used. Councilor Rahman.
Thank you. I agree with you, Chief. I'm council rep on the Railway Museum Board, and I have had discussions with board members on that, and that is their response. It is safety related. And on a separate note, I grew, like as Councillor Brennan said, you know, it's not the only horn that you hear in town, but I grew up a block away from that when it was an active train station and there were whistles blowing at all hours of the day. And it never bothered anybody, like in our neighborhood. So, you know, I agree with the safety aspect. So that's really all I have to say.
So having said all this, we need to be in touch with that one particular individual and just reinforce that this is a safety issue. And it really isn't, to me, all that loud. I mean, there are many other things in that particular area that are loud. If the air ambulance come right over top of that particular area, there's tractor trailers over in that area backing up. So I think that's the route we should go, is just explain to this gentleman that this is what it's used for, and yeah.
Through you, Madam Chair, our correspondence has indicated that to him, that's the purpose of it. That's why it's being used. We've indicated the type of people who ride on that train. And he was made aware of tonight's meeting. So he's well aware of the discussions taking place tonight. He was also advised that he may choose to appear as a delegation if he so chooses to continue with this.
So that's.
So, Madam Chair, if I may, we really don't need any direction because we're not taking any action on it. So we can simply convey, again, the position of the town.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Okay. Now we're at the part of the meeting where we're going to have an in-camera session. So we will be leaving all of you, and we thank you, because I'm sure when we come back out of in-camera, some of you people will have left, and we thank you very much for being here this evening. And I'll have a motion to move in camera, please. Councillor Robinson, Councillor McKenna, all in favor, and we'll move in camera. Thank you. thank you very much. Moving back in camp from an in-camera meeting where we were advised of a litigation, I can't speak.
Litigation.
Litigation matter, thank you. And now we have no notice of motions, and I need a motion for adjournment, please, Councillor Robinson, and that the committee adjourn its proceedings at, oh my goodness, 7:03 p.m. and stand so adjourned until the next duly called committee meeting. All in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Good job.
Are we out?
I was impressed, Peter. You did ask a question to